The manager does things right. The leader does the right things. Warren Bennis, a student and friend of Peter Drucker. A few years ago, the world watched a leadership decision unfold in real time that sparked outrage across industries. Over 800 employees of a major company logged on to a Zoom call expecting for an update from leadership. Instead, within 3 minutes, they were terminated by a pre-recorded message. No conversation, no dignity, no humanity. And what shocked people most wasn't the decision itself, it was the response afterward. Leadership defended it, repeatedly, publicly. The backlash was immediate. Employees protested, governments condemned it, customers lost trust, and the company's reputation was permanently tied to one question. What happens when organizations forget the human beings behind the business? Because leadership isn't about performance metrics. It's not about profit margins or efficiency. The way leaders treat people becomes culture. It becomes legacy, and eventually becomes reputation. And today, in a world, dare I say it, we've repeated this word so many times, AI, disruption, constant change, and increasing uncertainty, organizations are finally realizing something important. Technical expertise alone is not enough. That is exactly why the work of Peter Drucker matters now more than ever. So long before leadership became a buzzword, Drucker challenged organizations to think differently. In the 1940s, during one of the most difficult periods of business history, General Motors invited Drucker inside the organization to see how leadership and management actually functioned. What emerged from that work became the foundation of modern management thinking and later management as a liberal art. A philosophy grounded in the belief that leadership is not merely operational, it's deeply human. It requires ethics, self-awareness, communication, emotional intelligence, and understanding people. And that philosophy is what grounds the California Institute of Advanced Management and today's event. Today is about reflecting on the kind of leader you want to become, the type of culture you want to create when you walk into a room, the type of impact you leave behind long after the title, position, and achievements fade. My hope for each of you today is simple. That you leave inspired, yes, but changed in a way, transformed even. Because the future doesn't need more successful leaders. No, it needs more human ones. Welcome to the Leadership Blueprint. Thank you. I would like to recognize several distinguished leaders in attendance today. Vice Mayor of the City of Alhambra, Adele Andrade Stadler, Mayor Ardi Kasakyan, City of Glendale, Mr. Aziz Amiri, Chief Executive Officer of the Regional San Gabriel Valley Chamber, Ms. Paula Adams, Chief Human Resources Officer of the City of Glendale, Physician, Attorney, and Vice President of the Union of American Physicians and Dentists, Dr. Robert Bitante, Command Staff Member of the Glendale Fire Department, Mrs. Lucine Yaryan, Board Member of the Glendale Youth Alliance, Ms. Gemma Borosian, and special thank you, of course, to our event partners, City of Glendale, California Hispanic Chambers of Commerce, Institute of Electrical and Electronics Engineers, Regional San Gabriel Valley Chamber of Commerce, Alhambra Chamber of Commerce, Armenian Engineers and Scientists of America, and of course, our gracious sponsor for the event, Go Elite. I would also like to extend my sincere thanks to my right wing, otherwise known as Amy High, Executive Assistant to the President. For her nonstop, tireless efforts, the event would not come to life without her. And my left wing, our dear Masters in Organizational Leadership student, Linda Megardichian, for her time and her efforts. And of course, to all of the CIAM staff, your contributions are truly, truly appreciated. So, today's exceptional lineup of speakers are from healthcare, media, business, academia, and thought leadership. They will guide us through conversations on themes grounded in MLA philosophy, leading self, leading others, and leading with impact. It is now my absolute pleasure to introduce the president of CIAM to deliver the welcome address. Dr. Jack Pedenton is a leader who truly embodies the values we will discuss today: purpose-driven leadership, service to community, and leading with integrity. Under his leadership, CIAM continues to advance a human-centered vision of education, grounded in the management as a liberal art philosophy, preparing leaders to lead, yes, with knowledge, but more so with character, wisdom, and meaningful impact. His commitment to empowering students, fostering innovation, and building a values-driven academic community continues to shape the future of leadership education. We are honored to have him lead the way at the university, and so happy that he'll be welcoming you today. Dr. Jack Pedenton.
Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome you to California Institute of Advanced Management and the Leadership Blueprint. It is my honor to see and welcome get together with all distinguished leaders and the future leaders who care so deeply about growth, about impact, and about making a difference. If you have attended conference recently, you may see some common theme. AI is everywhere. AI is in every agenda, every panel, every keynote. But for good reasons. It is transforming how we work, how we decide, and how we compete. But today, in this auditorium, we are going to do something different. Instead of asking what machine can do better, we are going to focus on what only people can do. Instead of talking about algorithm, we're going to talk about judgment. Instead of talking about automation, we're going to talk about responsibility. Because no matter how advanced technology becomes, leadership remains deeply human. It is people who set directions, people who make choices, and people who live with the consequences of those choices. So today is not a break from the future. It is a return for what it always mattered and will always matter for the future. Before we begin, I'd like to ask a few questions, and I want you to think with me. You know, this is a leadership blueprint, and if we start the day with thinking, hopefully it would help engage you, and not just today, but to the future as well. I'd like to ask question why. Why is my most popular questions actually, and think along with me, please. Why does leadership matter to you? I'm asking that question again. Why does leadership matter to you? Not in theory, but in your own life, in your own work, in your own community. Maybe the most important question that I wanted to ask today is, why do you want to make an impact? We talk about leadership all the time, but fundamentally, why do we want to make an impact? So these are not easy questions, but they are essential ones. Today we have designed the experience in 4 important dimensions of leadership. Each one of the 4, you're going to walk away, maybe rethink, maybe act differently, and lead differently. The first dimension is leading self. Before we lead others, We must understand ourselves, our values, our strength, our weaknesses. Leading without self-awareness could not be effective. Leading grounded in clarity can be powerful. Second dimension, leading others. At its core, leadership is about people. It is about trust. It is about communication. It is about bringing the best in other people. In this increasing technology advancement, the human side of leadership matters more than ever. The third dimension is as important, leading with impact. I have some of my former students here, and I wanted to test if they remember what we actually talk in class. And sometimes they'll disappoint me, but I have to just call them back sometimes. So leading is not measured by activities. Leading is measured by results. Oh my God, okay, you get your A and keep it that way. Thank you so much. Actually, that's something that I'm so proud of, and being part of CIAM. Leadership is not measured by activities, it is measured by result. What change that you make in the community because of your leadership is important. Who benefits from your leadership? What endures? So if you walk away today and you can remember that, it doesn't matter how busy you are. The result that you make matters as for your leadership. And the final dimension is leading through management as a liberal art. At CIAM, we believe that leadership is not confined to business, not to any one discipline. It is a liberal art, one that integrates knowledge, ethics, judgment, and purpose. It asks us to think broadly, act responsibly, and lead to service society. This perspective is deeply influenced by Peter Drucker, who challenged us that leadership is not about power, it is about responsibility. He reminded us that the ultimate test of leadership is not how many people that follow you, but how many people that grow because of you, right? Many of my students, although in the dark, they start nodding, and then because they remember what we talk. So this idea is so relevant today, and it would always be relevant. Because leadership is no longer about having all the answer. It is about how we can ask better questions, make thoughtful decisions, and create a condition where other people can succeed. It's no longer a self-focus, it's community-focused. Because leadership is so important not only to you, but to your community. One of the most powerful ways that we can grow as a leader is to learn from some other leaders as well. And today, you'll be hearing from individuals who have led successfully in healthcare, in media, in business, and in academia. Each bring real-world experience, hard-earned lessons, and honest perspective. I hope that you don't just listen, but you engage, reflect, and connect. Leadership is not learned by isolation. It is developed through dialogues, through relationship, and through continuous learning. Stay curious, stay connected, and continue this conversation days ahead. Let me leave you with one final thought from Peter Drucker, and I hope that you take away this thought. I'm repeating or rephrasing what I just mentioned. So, the purpose of leadership is not to create followers, it's to create more leaders. If each one of us take this seriously, you're not only committing to lead, but you're committing to develop more people, and your impact would extend beyond yourself. Thanks so much for being here. I look forward for our dialogues ahead, and welcome to the Leadership Blueprint. Thank you.
Thank you. So, I am delighted to introduce someone I've had the honor of knowing for many years, Araxia Karapetyan. As an Emmy Award-winning journalist and anchor for Fox 11, Araxia has built an extraordinary career rooted in excellence, authenticity, compassion, and grace under pressure. I've witnessed the impact she's had on her community, how she carries herself both on and off camera. Her ability to connect with people in a genuine and meaningful way is what makes her such an inspiring example of leadership. Today, she'll be speaking on the important topic of leading self, so please help me warmly welcome Ms. Araxia Karapetyan.
Hello again. Thank you for having me. It's my first time on this campus, and I was just saying what a beautiful campus it is, and hopefully I'll have an opportunity to look around when I'm finished here, because I raced from my parking spot to be here on time. All right, so let's begin. Leading self. That's an interesting topic that took me a little bit of time to reflect on. So I'll tell you this, there's a moment, if any of you have ever been on television or experienced anything to do with television, where the floor director will point at you, they'll do a countdown, you see the red light blink, and you hear the music, and all of a sudden, you feel all of these emotions come over you. They take over you, actually, and you start to question everything. You start to question, am I good enough? How do I look today? Is this outfit flattering? Does what I'm about to say make any sense? Do I sound like I've researched it enough? Am I educated enough? And all of these things kick in. And all of the training, all of the experience, all of the research, all of the preparedness that you've prepared for just fades away. And you're left with just being yourself and vulnerable. So for me, that happens every single morning. Every single morning, live on camera, and I know that thousands of people across Los Angeles are tuning in. But yet, every single morning, I will have this feeling. I've been in this business for about 20 years now, and I've been with Fox 11 for 14 of them. And still, every single morning, I have that feeling. Imposter syndrome is a real thing. And I think many of us experience it and feel it, whether you want to admit it or not. I'm admitting to you that I feel it all the time. It's when you just are insecure in who you are, what you're doing, where you're going, what you're going to become. And I will tell you a little secret. The most insecure people, are the people you watch on television. They are the most insecure. And they may come across as confident, but deep down, they are questioning themselves at every moment. What I've learned, though, in this form of questioning myself is that it's an invitation. It's an invitation, and you have to change your perspective. And you have to show up as yourself, fully, honestly, without apology, and just be you. The nice thing, though, I will say about television is that it's a fresh start every morning. I essentially have a clean slate, and I can do it all over again. You can't say that about many jobs. So it really is something unique in this career. But today I'm here to talk to you not just about journalism. I'm not here just to talk about television or the media and how the media industry is changing. We're going to get to some of that. But I want you to understand the hardest leadership challenge any of you, us, myself will ever face is leading with self. So I'm going to begin with what I'm calling the origin story. And this is where I will tell you, I've come to realize I was always this person. So I'm going to take you back. I want you to picture a little version of Araxia, a little girl in Armenia, endlessly curious, always craning her neck to see what was going on. If there was a crowd, I was drawn to the crowd. I wanted to know what was happening. I was always asking the question why. A question my kids ask me every day now. It drives me nuts because there's never an end to it. I always wanted to understand the story behind the story. And I still do. So that was me. When family would come over, or guests, neighbors, relatives, before they could even settle down or have a proper conversation, I had already organized a performance, like a full production, original song, original choreography, original plays. I had written, directed, and I would star as myself. And these poor souls had absolutely no idea what they were in for. It was really fun for me, not sure about them. But here's what I came to understand later in life, that I wasn't showing off and I wasn't doing it for the applause. I was doing it because people fascinated me and their reactions fascinated me. And it was my way of actually connecting with them. So the older I became, these performances, of course, became more subtle. The obsession, though, stayed the same. The obsession and my curiosity about people. So I would love to people watch people in the park, at the restaurant, wonder, who are they? What's their story? Are they married? Are they about to get married? How long have they been together? It was just fascinating to me. I could also walk into a room and pretty immediately I could feel the energy. Who was comfortable? Who was guarded? Who was carrying something heavy that day? So the question of why and what's the story behind the story is something that I've pretty much had my entire life. And I didn't realize it then, but now looking back, I didn't realize that I was developing the most essential skill that a journalist, or really I think any leader, can possess. And that is empathy. Now, empathy is very different from sympathy. And that difference is really important. So sympathy is feeling sorry for someone, right? So, I feel sorry for you. Empathy is when you say, I understand what it feels like to be you. Sympathy keeps a distance, but empathy closes that distance. And with empathy, I think, we develop the single greatest courage of leadership. So that is when you truly start to understand someone who your opinions are perhaps radically different from theirs, their beliefs, their background, their life experience, their worldviews, whatever it is, all of a sudden you're challenged yourself as a person. And that really takes bravery, because it would be so much easier if we all lived in our own little bubble. So I didn't choose journalism. Journalism chose me. Because everything I've always been, the curious, the empathetic, drawn to people, hungry to understand, to know why, to dig deeper, all of that, I have found a home in this profession. So looking back, it does make sense. But I want to be clear, knowing your path is not the same as knowing yourself. Those are two different things as well. They're two different journeys. The second one, knowing yourself, is one that really never ends. It's always evolving, it's always changing. But if you know who you are, you can effectively change with it. And that leads me to my second topic, the gray zone. That's what I'm calling it, because this is where you learn to see things differently. So for a long time, I had this secret that I felt a little embarrassed and ashamed of. And it's nothing crazy or dramatic. It's the fact that I didn't possess strong opinions. I know it doesn't sound that scary, does it? But it is. Because in this era where the media climate, especially right now, right, is so radical in the sense that we live in a time where you're expected to have an opinion about everything, a firm position, a side. You're either this or that, pick a lane, plant your flag, state your brand, be loud. But I couldn't do it, and I still can't. When I'm in a room full of people and we're having a meeting and they say, what do you think of this? I genuinely can see both sides to things. So I have a really hard time just taking a stance about something. And I would wonder, and I still do sometimes, but I'm more aware, is something wrong with me? Why can't I have an opinion? Why am I not a passionate enough person where I can't just decide on something? Eventually, though, I've come to realize that I don't think that's a weakness, actually. I think that I'm just a nuanced person. And nuance in this world that we live in is actually, if you think about it, I think it's a superpower, because the ability to seemingly and confidently hold two ideas and two things can be true at the same time, and you're mature enough to understand that, is a superpower. To be uncomfortable with the fact that I don't need to immediately have an opinion and reach a decision at this moment is not indecision. It's actually, I think, intellectual courage. So this ability, I call it to see in gray. I don't see things in black or white. I see everything in gray. And that means I'm able to then put myself in someone else's shoes. And that's where the empathy comes in. You can tell the story, for example, of a mother who lost her child to, say, gun violence. At the same time, you can tell the story of a gun shop owner who strongly, say, believes in the Second Amendment. And you can treat both of those stories with the same humanity, because you're not trying to agree with one or the other. You're genuinely trying to understand. So I've interviewed people with worldviews polar opposite of mine. I've sat across people who've done terrible things. I've covered stories that have broken my heart and have pretty much on a daily basis I question humanity. And every single time I walk into that situation with the same intention. What is this person's truth? What shaped them? What happened to them in life that made them become this way, behave this way, feel this way? The why. Because one thing I know to be true, after 20 years of listening to people, every single human being on this earth, every single person, they all want the same fundamental things: safety, security, freedom, health, and happiness for themselves and for their loved ones. I don't care who you are, I don't care where you're from, we all want the same thing. So we might fight with how to get there, disagree, and sometimes maybe violently about who deserves what and why. But the destination is the same for all of us. If more people, I think, in leadership positions, whether it's politics, in business, in media, in education, whatever it is, if we operated with that type of an understanding, I genuinely believe that the world would be a better place. I know, it's wishful thinking. But here's the part that requires you to lead yourself first. You can't extend generosity to others if you haven't done the hard work yourself, if you haven't done the work on yourself. So you have to understand your own biases, your own fears, your own blind spots. You have to really know you, the stories you tell yourself about who you are and who you're not. Leading yourself is not a destination. It's actually something you do daily. It's a daily practice. It means asking yourself, am I seeing things clearly? Am I seeing things only because this is the way I've been taught to see them? It means getting uncomfortable in the gray zone. And speaking of the gray zone, where there's so much unknown, is the industry I'm about to talk about, because this industry is really shifting and changing so much. Everything changing, but what is staying the same? For 20 years now, almost, that I've been in the business, there's no consistency, and the ground feels like it's shifting underneath my feet every single day. Once upon a time, there was a time where people wanted to know what was happening in the world, so they would tune in for the evening newscast, and they would have that same anchor, the same person, the same time, the same channel, tell them what was important in that day. That world is gone. I think we all know this. Today, the evening news will air. If you do watch, you already know most of what you're watching. Why would you even waste your time, right? You've already consumed that story probably 3 ways. On the phone, on a podcast, maybe there's a family group chain text and someone sent you a video. So you know what's going on as it's happening immediately. It's pretty profound. Not only that, but the idea of journalism has really changed to the point where any average person with a phone, no degree, no credentials, no assignment, desk editor, You can just film something on your phone. You can post it, reach thousands, if not millions of people. You can do all of this before a camera crew even arrives at the location. So citizen journalism is a very real thing. And if you watch the news stations, you know that oftentimes we're showing videos that are, quote unquote, going viral or trending. These are videos from average people. So it's remarkable that that's happening because in a way you're holding the powerful accountable. You're giving a voice to maybe communities that would not otherwise get attention or they're systematically ignored. It's really put the ability to speak and to communicate in the hands of the average person. However, there is a big but here, the problem here. There's a big landscape of misinformation as a result of this. That's where misinformation can spread. It can accelerate. That's where the algorithms reward outrage over accuracy, where people live in these information bubbles, where they're consuming content that already confirms what they believe in. Because it's more comfortable, right? Let's surround ourselves with everything we believe in. Let's not challenge ourselves and not push ourselves. Let's not stretch our mind or imagination. The idea of there's two sides to every story, that's the foundational root of journalism, that has eroded. Not because it stopped being true, but because people have decided, hey, I don't want both sides of a story. I just want one side, my side. And I'll be honest with you, I find that to be really terrifying and scary and disturbing. I say that not as a journalist, by the way. I say that because as a human being, I believe our ability to connect and understand one another, to actually see one another, is what holds a society together. With that changing of the times, let's talk about streaming. So with a show of hands, I'm just curious, who here actually watches the news on a regular basis? Okay, and who here streams what they watch versus cable? Streams. So streaming right now is the big thing in the news world. Local stations are just putting all their time, resources, and effort and energy into streaming. It's all about streaming content because that's kind of where the world is going. Very few people actually go home and turn on the television. The business model is changing. The distribution is absolutely changing. The definition of what we do, I would say, is kind of changing too. I'll give you an example. Oftentimes, we're not even referred to as journalists. We're referred to as news personalities. And for a long time, I had a very complicated feeling about that definition because it feels like it diminishes journalism and what I do. Like I'm trading gravitas for entertainment, being a personality on television. But here's what I've come to understand. It's not instead of journalism. It's in addition to journalism. It's almost like you have to change your perspective and use it as a strength. Your personality can connect with people and can translate to views and viewers so everyone can benefit. In morning news, people aren't watching to just be informed, as I mentioned earlier. They're watching because it's a routine, it's a habit, they want to start their day with you. For whatever reason, they feel like you're their friend, right? It's just a habitual thing. Your background noise for them, or it's just something they do when they're having their morning coffee. And after a while of months and years that you're showing up in their living room, they really build a connection with you. And when you think about it, that's actually still a very special thing. Every station, though, in Los Angeles, I will tell you, is doing the exact same stories pretty much at the exact same time. Like the news is the news. In the newsroom, we have television monitors of every station in LA. And pretty much everyone's covering the same thing at the same time. It's pretty amazing. The exact same thing. So the question then becomes, why choose to watch them over them? You over her or him? Because of the connection, because of the authenticity, because somewhere along the way you decided the people on the screen are real to you. They feel like you. You feel like you can relate. So yes, this industry is changing. It will keep on changing. Here's the leadership lesson, though, I've taken away from that. You cannot control the landscape. You can only control how clearly you know yourself within that landscape. So when you know who you are, when you know your values, your voice, your purpose, your roots are rooted, you're able to adapt and still be recognizable. You can evolve, just don't lose yourself. And that is resilience, sustainability, and that is leading self. When Maria referred to me saying I'm on and off camera, that's actually my next topic, is being yourself on and off camera. Something that most people also don't know is that being authentic on camera is perhaps one of the hardest things that I've ever had to learn how to do. I know it sounds very simple, just be yourself. Just be yourself. How easy is that? It's very hard. It's very hard. How many of you are yourselves at work? Actually yourselves. Well, that's good. I see a few. Where you're not careful, you're not trying to be professional, you're not trying not to offend. I'm talking like that version of yourself, where you're not editing things, when you're just being who you are. I feel like we are versions of ourselves, but we're still performing for the most part, whether it's at work, at a meeting, at a family function, whatever it is. There's still parts of you that you do keep hidden. For me, the biggest question was, how much do I share if I'm expected to be myself? It took a while to get comfortable with that notion. How much of my personal life do I discuss when I'm sitting up there on an anchor chair? How much do I let people in? How much vulnerability do I show? How personal is too personal? Let me tell you, even this, it's like a security right here. Because when I step here, I feel really exposed. And you feel vulnerable. One of the hardest things I ever did was the weather, when I was doing the weather for a while. Because when I would stand there, I felt naked. I truly I didn't know where to put my hands. I felt like, now you're seeing everything. It was the most uncomfortable feeling. And so the podium, the anchor desk, the papers, this, holding this, these are all forms of security. On morning shows especially, you're able to showcase some of your personality. And it becomes nice once you learn to get comfortable in that. And it takes years to get comfortable in that. I would say I've been at Fox for 14 years. About year 10 is when I started to feel comfortable doing that. So a decade. A decade. There are moments earlier on in my career where I was so focused on just doing the right thing, hitting the cue, pronouncing the word perfectly, maintaining the right expression. You kind of get lost in the mechanics of all of it. You're so focused on being proficient, you become hollow inside, even the way you present yourself. When you start in this industry, you're often young. And so when you're young, it's used against you because you can't be taken seriously, so you try to look older. And then later on, you're doing the reverse in life, which is ironic. But you try to even speak in a deeper voice. You have a hairstyle that looks like a helmet. You are wearing clothes you would never wear. You're doing everything because you think that's what you need to do. Once you relax and you gain some experience, you understand that it's not about being perfect, it's about being real. I mean, really real, because real is very messy. With real, you laugh at all the wrong moments maybe, you tear up on camera. Oh, is that professional to show emotion? It is. You may disagree with your co-anchor, and sometimes the audience will interpret that for whatever way they do, and you don't care at that point. You admit to things where you don't know it, right on the spot. That's real. You know you've arrived on camera when you're doing all of these things real. All the things you thought you would be shown to be doing wrong, that's when you've arrived on camera. Just being yourself. You can't manufacture authenticity. You can't decide to be authentic and then kind of switch and become something else. It grows, it develops, it requires you basically doing some inner work within you. Knowing yourself means also doing some uncomfortable things. It means kind of sitting in parts of you that you're keeping off camera. It means really asking hard questions, being willing to not love perhaps all of the answers, being really honest. So leading self starts in private long before it is exposed to the public. That leads me to the last part of my speech here, finding that greater purpose. Finding my greater purpose, it's still a work in progress. But recently my eldest daughter, about 2 weeks ago, she always asks me random profound questions right around bedtime. I don't know if it's a scam, but like, why now, right? There's always these questions where it's not a simple answer. Anyway, she said to me, "Mom, what makes you happy? What do you like about doing your job?" Okay. Well, it wasn't that hard of an answer this time because all the stories I've fought to tell, the people that I've been with during their hardest moments, the breaking news we've had to cover for hours on end, where your mind goes numb because you are now just talking for the 8th hour in a row. All the things you got right, all the things you got wrong, that version of yourself that started 14 years ago here in LA or almost 20 years ago in this industry, and the version of myself that was standing there in the bedroom when she asked this question, all of it, it was a full circle moment. And here's what I told her, and I really mean it. I feel most alive when I'm creating something, writing, editing, putting a story together. It's kind of like with the news stories, they're pieces of a puzzle and you can rearrange them in certain ways and it can really change the flow of the story. It can sometimes even change the meaning of the story. And once you realize what a powerful thing that is, you take that power even more seriously. But all of those things, the creativity aspect behind it, and seeing that finished product, it really gives you a feeling of accomplishment. And you can't replicate that anywhere else. So I told her I feel most myself when I'm the voice for someone who perhaps cannot speak. When I interview someone who maybe is overlooked, ignored, written off, and you realize that the story you're telling is giving this person a chance to speak to the world. At that moment, you realize you're doing something really important. And so it's a calling for me. Journalism, I view it as a public service. And I take it very seriously. I really feel like it's a privilege to do that. Each of us, I think, has that ability to find a passion and to feel like you have purpose. I feel most fulfilled, I told her, when I'm doing something bigger than myself. Here's what I want you to hear, though, when I say that. Not the part about journalism, not the part about being on television, the principle kind of beneath that. Each of us has something, some intersection of natural ability, deeper curiosity, genuine care, when we're operating inside of things that make us feel most alive, most fully ourselves. That is your purpose. And once you find it, it's really a gift. Leading yourself means having the courage to find it, name it, protect it, often in a world where it tries to pull you in all sorts of directions, and to return to who you are, even if for a moment you stray. The industry is going to change. It's changing. It will change. It's happening as we speak. It will keep changing. It's unpredictable. The platform you build, though, for your work may even not exist in 5 years, 10 years. The title you carry may shift. The tools are going to evolve. AI, that's taking over. But who you are, the curiosity you were born with, the empathy you've developed through life experience, the values you've chosen, the purpose that makes you feel alive, that does not change unless you let it. So I'm going to leave you with the same invitation that shows up for me every single morning when that red light goes on. Show up fully yourself, without apology. Lead yourself in private with honesty every single day, and the public will follow. Because we have a saying, the camera doesn't lie. And it's true, the camera doesn't lie. For the most part, I would say I'm the exact same person on and off camera. For the most part, because if I was truly myself, I would be fired for for cursing, for being offensive, for saying something inappropriate. So usually we leave all that for commercial breaks. That's the real show. So know your why, embrace the gray, stay curious, stay uncomfortable. Above all, I would say protect the person you are when no one is watching, right? These are all this basic, simple things I think I was taught as a kid, but it's hard to actually implement because that is the person the world needs right now. Just stay true to yourself. Thank you so much.
We have some questions from the audience. So one question is, are there objective rights and wrongs in the gray zone, and how does not picking a side affect standing firm on your beliefs?
Well, I don't pick a side because, as I explained, I can see both sides of anything, really. So if I'm talking to someone and they're explaining to me why they feel that way, I'm easily able to understand and put myself literally in their shoes. And the same thing can happen on the reverse. So I think it helps me tell an accurate story and do justice for the story itself, because I'm trying to showcase both sides of something, and then you, the audience, can decide for yourself. I don't know if I answered that question fully.
Yeah, that was beautiful. We have one more question. What happens when your environment conflicts with everything you have worked so hard to build in your quote-unquote self?
When my environment...
When your environment conflicts with everything you've worked so hard to build in yourself.
I wish I knew who asked that question. I have some follow-ups. Oh, you did.
Oh, hi. Would you like to elaborate?
Yes, please.
So I work in a completely different industry, and a lot of what you said really internalized. I could relate to it. I feel like the environment I am currently in, my work environment, clashes with every single thing I personally believe in.
Where do you work? Let's start there.
I'm an engineer.
Okay.
I switched jobs for a raise, and now I feel like I've just thrown away everything I worked my entire career for.
Because you chose that job for a raise rather than for the deeper...
Well, I thought it was also a deeper, I'm going to go learn new things, blah, 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 blah. Mm-hmm. But I didn't look deeper into it when I chose the job. But,
So you feel like you're losing yourself.
Yeah.
So this is... I'll try to answer this. I'm going to answer it from my perspective. So for a long time, I felt like the job was such a big part of my identity, and it still is to a degree. But once I would say I had kids, that shifted for me as a mom, because your perspectives change, and things become more clear for better or worse. Everything else in my life started to identify me. It wasn't just about the job anymore. So I don't think if you're looking to find gratification and satisfaction just from your job, that's very rare. I think that you have to not let the job define you. It's a small portion of you. So you have to have other things in your life, which I'm sure you do, but you have to remind yourself, it's like a training exercise, remind yourself and have perspective that, okay, I'm here doing this job right now, but there's all of these other things in my life that make me happy and make me feel fulfilled. And it's a new job, so I would say give it some time, because sometimes with, I don't know your industry as well, but sometimes when I feel like, and I have more moments where I'm sitting there on the anchor desk and I'm like, what am I doing? Like, what am I doing with my life? I have that. I find something like a story I'm telling or working on a project that kind of reinvigorates that hunger and that passion that I have for my career. And then once I work on that and I see the finished result, I feel this sense of, okay, this was my purpose.
It's so hard when being a woman in a male-dominated industry, like I've spent 10 years learning who I am in that environment, and then all of a sudden I'm thrust in this environment where it's completely 360. What do I do with myself? Like, why did I choose this? Like, questioning everything that I built my some ground.
I think that's all honestly though normal. And I think it's good you question yourself. I think that means you're still thinking, feeling, and figuring it out. I think there's a misconception that you have to have things figured out, and you don't. Even as an adult, you're still figuring it out as you figure yourself out. So I would put less pressure. I feel like a therapist, but I hope that helps a little bit. Okay, thank you.
I'm especially honored to introduce our next speaker, Dr. Richard Riggs, a giant in the healthcare community, really, so it's a pleasure to have him here. A distinguished physician executive, healthcare innovator, and leader in clinical informatics and AI. Dr. Riggs served as Senior Vice President and Chief Medical Officer of Cedars-Sinai from 2019 to 2025 and had served in a variety of leadership positions and roles at Cedars for nearly 3 decades. He currently serves as Chief Medical Officer for Health Leap AI and continues to advise emerging healthcare technology ventures. As a clinical professor at Cedars-Sinai and the David Geffen School of Medicine at UCLA, Dr. Riggs works in advancing healthcare innovation, operational excellence, and leadership in medicine. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Richard Riggs.
Well, thank you, Araxia. That was really great. Wow, if you feel that way, how the rest of us feel when we're on stage? So before anything, I want to thank the California Institute of Advanced Management for the invitation to be here, and Dr. Akopian for her outreach to make this happen and graciousness in facilitating the conversation. I'm generally honored to be here and be a part of this panel today. So, Dr. Kopian reviewed some of my past credentials, so I'm not going to start with that or go back over that. I'm going to start with something more important. So I'm happily married, 31 years, a couple of days ago, May 27th, to my husband, the same man I met in Pensacola, Florida, when I was a young physician discovering where I wanted to go and what I wanted to be. We have twin daughters who will, in 2 weeks, walk across the stage and gather their diplomas from college. I tell you that because the decisions that I've made along the way are part of me as a whole person. They're not part of a single career path, as we might state, or a single decision about a certain job. They're part of what anchors me, my family, my beliefs, my integrity. So Peter Drucker, whose philosophy is the foundation of this institution, wrote that management is about human beings. It is performance, but before you can do that for others, you must do it for yourself. And so that is what this session is about, leading myself so I can lead others. So I'm going to share a little bit about me as a physician who set out to heal as many people as he possibly could and had to learn sometimes the hard way how to lead himself first. So I'm going to rewind the clock and, sort of some questions that happen, most questions start with a moment of friction. At least that's how I found life to be. So I grew up wanting to be a healer, medical school, internship, residency in physical medicine and rehabilitation, or PM&R. That is a specialty that, really helps anybody restore function from any type of limitation they may have, but I was most interested in the catastrophic recovery. brain injury, spinal cord injury, stroke, things like that. The patients, really nobody else knew what to do with. Those are the ones I was interested in helping. So I completed my residency at the University of Pennsylvania and joined Cedars-Sinai Medical Center as a faculty member. Prestigious institution, world-class colleagues, and I had ideas, specific ideas about how brain injury rehabilitation should be delivered. That was my primary sort of training focus, and how we could do it better, more compassionately. And I was told, essentially, when I brought these ideas forward to administration, not yet. Wait your turn, stay in your lane. So how many of you in the audience have had some similar form of that delivered to you over the years? Yes. So how do we respond in that moment really is part of our own defining self-leadership, right? How do we understand what that means for us? So Drucker taught that the effective executives know where their time goes, know where they should concentrate their strengths, and know where they should not be. So knowing your strengths is not arrogance, it's clarity. And clarity about self is a precondition to every other kind of leadership. So these thoughtful conversation and reflections that we all share when we're sharing about our growth and careers, they're important because everybody does have them and they need to. So I knew what I was good at, I knew what I cared about, and I knew that if the environment around me would not let me do those things, I had decisions to make. And it was a time of sort of tension for me of, really not understanding how I could solve all those things in a straightforward way. So I've thought a lot about that moment and what it was asking of me, and I think Drucker named it the best. The most important thing in communication is to hear what isn't being said. Now think about that. Oftentimes, we're not allowed to come forth in our jobs and actually say what we really, mean. We have to have that be a polished dialogue that sort of points to how we deliver communications professionally, as opposed to in between the commercial breaks. So what I heard underneath that was an invitation that I hadn't expected, and then literally the earth moved. January 17th, 1994, at 4:30 in the morning, a 6.7 magnitude earthquake shook the entire Los Angeles basin, condemned the building that the Cedars-Sinai Rehabilitation Unit was in. So, what to do with the rehabilitation program, the unit? No one was sure what to do. The early 90s were a time of Medi-Cal managed care, HMOs, things like that. The healthcare industry was rapidly changing. And so, would we buy a building, keep it on campus, move it off campus, expand it? The future was generally open. And what happened was the chairman, medical director, retired, and they hired him back at that same time, pointing to sort of a non-committal, even in the leadership space. So about that time, I got a call from a physician placement firm, and a for-profit healthcare company was opening a new 35-bed rehabilitation hospital in Alabama, and they needed a medical director. Now, I grew up in Atlanta, so that may not seem quite so far-fetched as moving to Alabama, but so I thought, well, if I'm the medical director, I can build a brain injury program, all the rehabilitation programs that I want in that building, the way I believe it should be built. No one to tell me, not yet. Well, that was a little bit of fallacy because we don't always get to do what we want to do anywhere. But so at 33 years old, less than 2 years out of residency, I said yes. I'm not exactly sure, exactly what I was thinking, but yes, I said yes. And I thought the corporation, they were expanding greatly. I thought that they would have something like a turnkey hospital kit when I got there. Well, I would show up and there would be protocols and order sets and clinical guidelines, all neatly organized and waiting. There was not. That was not the case. So I spent 5 weeks creating from scratch order sets, clinical protocols, policies and procedures. 5 weeks of intense, unglamorous foundational work before we ever admitted a patient. And I want to pause there for just a moment and say that there was one therapist that came to work at the building, at the new hospital, that had worked in inpatient rehabilitation. One. None of the nursing aides, none of the other therapists. So I had a lot of teaching to do. This is how we gather around and talk about patients as a team conference. This is what interdisciplinary decisions look like. These are the basics of brain injury, spinal cord injury. So I had to do a lot of education. But when we opened, the hospital filled up quickly. I was the only rehabilitation physician in the region. I was managing 35 patients a day, 5 to 6 discharges and admissions daily, as well as all the administrative work. It was really relentless. I compressed a lot of experience into a very short period of time with regard to patient care. But here is the first real leading others moment in the story. I couldn't have done it alone. I hired a nurse practitioner, Sherry Strickland, and an exceptional one, and I had a choice. I could either manage her tightly, or I could be clear about the mission and trust her to execute alongside me as a full partner. I chose the latter. You don't lead people by controlling them. You lead them by giving them a clear purpose, the tools they need, and the dignity of being trusted with real responsibility. She rose to every bit of it, and I still keep in touch with her today. So, how many of you have had an earthquake moment? Yeah, a disruption that turned out to be an opening? Yeah. I remember in my medical school days, there's match day, and so we had a group of us that needed to select a secondary match option. And this one professor told us this parable that went on and on and on. But essentially, you know, whether this is good or bad, the passage of time will tell, was the ultimate moral of that story, and I find it to be true. Yes. Sometimes a building has to be condemned before the other right door might open, or you might even actually take the opportunity to look at it. So I was in Alabama. I was, busy helping folks heal, families heal, creating programs, and then someone asked me to do something I wasn't willing to do. It crossed a line that I really hadn't fully articulated until it was already tested. So back in those days, about 12, 18 months into opening a hospital, the Center for Medicare, Medicaid, sort of services, they come and inspect the hospital. They say, does this meet standards so that we can certify this is a hospital that we are going to, set up payment rates for and things like that. So they came, they looked, they found 0 clinical issues, not one. There was some HR file issue and some CLIA lab certificate that was outdated, but clinically we were clean. So I felt very validated. And I had my regular meeting with the CEO coming up. So I walked into that office and we started talking about the survey, and I was pretty ebullient. And she looked at me and said, well, yeah, there's that. But Rick, let me ask you a question. Would you ever play a basketball game without committing a foul? I looked at her puzzled. She went on. The corporation had sent signals that patient criteria could be more lenient. The financial logic was obviously clear to me. The clinical and ethical logic was not. I told her I would take that under advisement. I thought to myself, I know I don't look good in stripes or orange. I just don't. But for a physician, the mission is the patient welfare, and that's non-negotiable. And when we start negotiating around that, we've already begun to lose the thing that makes us effective. And so that is, our first oath is to do no harm. So, and there's another leading others dimension here. The people around are watching what you protect. Because that message didn't just go out to me from the CEO, it went out to other folks that were involved in admissions. So they're watching what you protect, your values, under pressure. The most powerful leadership signal you will ever send, not your words, not your mission, what you do when it might cost you something, when you have to stand up to something that you believe in. So I knew it was time to explore other options. So Peter Drucker's principle on character states that integrity without knowledge is weak and useless, and knowledge without integrity is dangerous and dreadful. And it felt to me that I was in a place of knowledge and that I needed to understand where I should go with that. So I threw my hat in the ring for other opportunities, and then something interesting happened. Cedars called. They had figured out what they wanted to do with the rehabilitation program, and they wanted to know if I was interested in taking a look. So when I left Cedars for Alabama, I had said in my exit interview there with the Cedars CMO and said, look, there's tremendous potential here for a world-class rehabilitation program. You just have to commit to it. You have to commit leadership to it. But if you ever decide what you want to do with it, I'd be interested in coming back. So that wasn't bravado. I mean, I was clearly on a path to go do something else that felt right to me, but it was clarity about purpose. So 2 years later, when they called, they needed a new chair of physical medicine and rehabilitation. I interviewed, seemed like for days. I think it probably was for days. And they offered it to me, and I said yes. So I returned at age of 35, but I returned with earned authority. When I left, I didn't have that. There's a difference between the positional authority of, say, being a program director and earned authority. Positional authority is given to you. Earned authority is when people extend it to you because of what you have done. So I came back again, asking how the program could be better, where we needed to close gaps, not telling. I had a very talented executive director that I began as my dyad, Joan August. We began methodically building the program. Joan was a master class in leading others. She still is. She understood that her role was not to have all the answers, but to ask the right questions, hold the team accountable for the mission, and get out of the way. So when talented people are pointed in the right direction, they do amazing things. The best leaders are also the best students of leadership. So as the quality of our work became visible, the executive leadership of the hospital began to ask me to do the same quality work for the entire hospital. So I was managing, 40 some odd beds at that point. So they asked me to do it for the 900-bed hospital over and over again. And so this meant leading people that I had no direct authority over. I had to lead by influence. And this is where leading others gets generally hard. If they don't report to you, you have to do this by collaboration and really understanding, developing trust. So the currency that works in the best in those situations, it's not rank, it is credibility, it's showing up, being prepared, being honest about what you know and you don't know, and making the people in the room feel that the work matters. This is leading others. It's not a title, it is a practice, and I think that's one that I have developed in part because rehabilitation physicians work in teams and understand that you have to take information from the others around you that have more time. So that quality work led to the folks at Cedars asking me if I would be involved in the governance process for our electronic health record development. And so I was uniquely positioned for that because I had done this quality work across the hospital. And so I said yes. They said, well, we want you to do the physician governance, the pharmacy governance, the nursing governance, the interdisciplinary governance. I said, well, How hard can that be? Anyway, there was a lot of governance that needed to happen. So I think I probably had some decubiti on my tail from all the meetings that I was in. But anyway, but by the time that was done, actually, I knew the build of the electronic health record because I knew all the decisions. So when our chief medical information officer left, the chief information officer asked me to step in as interim. And I was like, well, I'm not a technician. I don't have technology. I don't have, coding skills. I'm not trained in this area. He said, I need some cover. I said, okay. So I said yes. So leading others sometimes means stepping into the gap, not because, you have the skill set that's perfect for that, but because the work needs a champion and it needs to get done. So meanwhile, on the rehabilitation front, the Cedars-Sinai had embarked upon conversations with Select Medical and UCLA to develop a new, very large rehabilitation hospital. And so about a year into that process, I was offered the medical directorship of the rehabilitation hospital, and I was offered the chief medical information officer at Cedars, the vice president role. I'm like, this is interesting. So I said what a lot of physicians often do that can't say no. I said, how about we do both? And so I embarked upon helping to facilitate both the rehabilitation hospital, but then also establishing the academic footprint and training and research informatics at Cedars-Sinai as CMIO. So 20 years after I opened a 35-bed hospital in Alabama, I helped open a 138-bed rehabilitation hospital in Century City, the California Rehabilitation Institute. It was a joint venture between Cedars-Sinai, Select, and UCLA, and it's the only clinical collaboration program between Cedars and UCLA to date. So it's not, usually those two institutions are sort of vying for the same patients. Here they're participating in helping heal the same patients. So I never thought I'd open another rehab hospital 20 years later, but I did have a better expectation of what I was going to be doing based upon the first experience. But 35 beds in Alabama, 138 in Century City, same purpose, vastly expanded scale. So I came back to Cedars not to claim something, I came back to build something. And then in December 2019 arrived, I was offered the opportunity to be the chief medical officer of Cedars-Sinai. And so I sat down, with my husband, and we had a discussion with our daughters too. And I said, if I take this role, you're going to see less of me, not more of me. So they said, yes, do it, Dad. No, they said, we agreed that it was a journey that I could go forth with. So I sat in the seat in December 2019. Yeah. 3 months later, the world was a different place. So this next part is about what I inherited in the portfolio of the chief medical officer. I inherited very efficient vertical production of people and outcomes, patient safety, health equity, epidemiology, quality, performance improvement. There was no connectivity. So we needed to align all of those functions to a single purpose, and that's what we did. We created a layer underneath that, an orchestration layer, to help information flow horizontally. Now, I don't know if you've ever taken an organizational chart and turned it up on its side, but it doesn't look very horizontal, right? It doesn't read that way. So what emerged is something I've come to think of as horizontal engines, lateral connective tissue instead of vertical structures. And this web that was weaved, information flowing across, not just up and down, made it a stronger fabric for us to really respond to the pandemic. So this connectivity, this runs on people who trust each other, to share information before they have certainty, to ask for help before they have exhausted themselves and to say, I don't know without fear of losing standing. During that time, my motto was to keep people safe, keep them informed, and keep them on their job. We had a job to do. And I said that often when I was in the front of the room as an incident commander. So, but it's the fact that when I got in front of the room at Incident Command, I had worked with all of these people that were there on all these other projects over the years, from quality to informatics to CMIO. So really, that's where the connectivity comes from. So when you're trusted, your judgment matters. And when they know who you are, they bring the problems. And they brought the solutions too. And listening for who has the solutions and who's on the front line was how we got through it. The crisis revealed it, but the leading and trust development happened way before that. So there's something similar in the movie Frozen. I know it's often, you might be, have seen that movie, but there's a point when she's in the forest and she says, we just have to make the best decision based on the information we know. That was my motto. Because, being honest, the information changed sometimes twice a day, 5 times a day. I mean, it was really fast and furious. So, but the combination, transparency, consistency, humility, it did build trust. We became a dependable source of guidance in an environment that was really, unstable and people desperately needed it. So another quote from Peter Drucker here, the purpose of organizations is to enable ordinary human beings to do extraordinary things. And I will say the people at Cedars-Sinai and the staff did extraordinary things for the community. So I had to ask myself, coming out of that, what's next? What might my next chapter look like? And more importantly, why? So when I took the job, I reflected that I sat down with my husband and our children, and my husband, being the CPA, CFO type that he is, he said, look, Rick, if you do the job for 5 years, after that, you can go do anything else you want. So why don't you commit to do it for 5 years, and we'll take it from there. I'm like, okay. Sort of sounds like my dad when he said, well, why don't you just try out medical school? Yeah, okay. So anyway, so 5 years would have been 2024. So in 2023, I began re-engaging in the space that I wanted to go into, which was this sort of healthcare, health tech developing space. I was speaking on panels, volunteering for webinars, doing podcasts on AI, on technology. So that's where I wanted to return. That was an exciting, energizing place for me. So our CEO announced his retirement for October of 2024. Drats. Foiled again. So I decided that I needed to stay on a bit longer to support the transition for the people that I led. So, because loyalty to institutions and people is itself a form of self-leadership. You honor the commitments that you've made, and I wanted to honor mine. So at the end of 2025, I did step back from Cedars-Sinai after almost 3 decades. And so what am I doing now? Well, you heard that I'm the CMO of HealthLeap AI. And HealthLeap AI was a company that came through our healthcare accelerator at Cedars about 3 years ago. And the vice president of food and nutrition came to me after their class and then the pilot that they had been granted and said, Rick, this is really great platform, but I don't have any money. Would you look at being the executive sponsor? I said, oh, okay, let me take a look. So I looked at it. It's a platform that identifies undiagnosed malnutrition risk factors in adult hospitalized patients. And up to 45-50% of hospitalized patients can be malnourished, and it's identified about 8% of the time across the nation. So very, very, I said, this is great for the patient. It's great for the dietitians because it reorganizes their work. They don't have to do chart review before they know who they should see. And, frankly, there's a way to facilitate coding for that allows for longitudinal care for the patient, but also revenue add-on for the diagnosis itself. Because very few patients get admitted just for the diagnosis of malnutrition. So I'm doing that. I'm advising another company in the an AI company in the administrative space, think payer denials, things like that. I was invited to be a executive in residence at Scottsdale Institute, which is a think tank sponsored by like 65 healthcare systems about how technology integrates into healthcare. And I'm a limited partner advising in a VC fund. So I think my point is, with all of that, is that I began to create what I wanted to have happen in the future. Even though it was delayed with this transition, it's about having the intention there. So I want to tell you why, but not what, but why all of this makes sense to me. So the question at the start was, how many people can I help heal? Either by caring for them directly or by creating programs and systems of care that extend healing beyond what my two hands could deliver. So direct patient care, I healed individuals one at a time, one family at a time, helped them repair their lives. It was irreplaceable. I love being a doctor. I followed some of my long-term patients over 2 decades until I closed up shop in December. Building a rehabilitation program, I created one that helped to create one that healed hundreds, and then now thousands with the footprint at Cal Rehab. Leading clinical quality across the hospital, I shaped conditions that protected tens of thousands of lives with others who knew how to help get that done. Now, artificial intelligence in healthcare, we have the opportunity to help develop and guide systems that will identify risk and deliver better care to millions of patients who would otherwise be missed. We're talking about having really agentic caregivers for people who can't get care now anywhere. They don't have a PCP or they don't have information in their geographic area. So it's not a departure from medicine for me, it's medicine pursued at scale. And so I think, I want to have you think about this. AI has been mentioned already several times, but Peter Drucker said, the greatest danger in times of turbulence is not the turbulence, it's to act with yesterday's logic. So we all need to think about what this does mean to our industry or our personal, professional life, and think about that. So I'm going to wrap up here. Peter Drucker wrote that the most important personal development question is, how can I improve? What is my contribution? So leading self is not about personal optimization. It's about understanding your contribution clearly enough to make decisions that serve it, even when those decisions are uncomfortable. For me, it meant leaving an institution, at 33 because it could not hold what I wanted to build. It meant spending 5 weeks writing protocols in Alabama before I saw my first patient. It meant saying no to a CEO who suggested more leniency with patient selection. It meant returning to Cedars not with resentment, but with the authority earned through doing difficult things. It meant holding a CMO portfolio together during a pandemic by telling the truth, even when the truth was uncertain. It meant knowing when it was time to step into a new frontier. So I started the talk with the most important thing, 31 years of married, twin daughters about to graduate from college. That's my anchor. That's the things that gives this story coherence for me. So everything I described today about leading self and others, the clarity about values, the willingness to make hard decisions, the discipline of earned authority, none of it was ultimately for me. It was precondition to helping to lead others in programs. You cannot give people a clear mission if you've not found your own. You can't hold a line under pressure if you have not decided in advance where your line is. And you can't build trust with a team if you've not built the self-awareness to know how you show up. Leading self is not the destination, it's the foundation that makes leading others possible. So the most important thing in self-management is to take responsibility for your own development, your own values, and your own contribution. That's Peter Drucker. So I would leave you with this. What is your contribution? What will be your contribution? You're going through leadership training, understanding what that is ultimately. What is your contribution and what will it be is really a take-home for today. Thank you.
We have a few questions from the audience. Do you think that AI would enable more people to have easier access to healthcare, both physical and mental? And how safe is it for the patients as far as trusting AI?
Okay, somebody pull up a couch. We need to have it's a long question. Okay, first of all, so it definitely will make healthcare more accessible. That's the bottom line. So ARPA-H is a government-funded research. Their goal is to have an agentic AI agent that can treat congestive heart failure by protocol for every person in America if needed. They lead with 5% of folks with congestive heart failure are on the correct medication regimen at the right dose. 5% in America. Now these are protocols that are well established. They're not applied. Also, 43% of Americans live in a county without a cardiologist. Why should we not be allowing something that's protocolized to be driven by automation? So the answer to that is yes. Where is this occurring? Utah has a sandbox that's currently in place where they're allowing refill of medications that are protocolized also without having to see a physician. Additionally, they're starting a protocol for mental health patients to have their mental health medications also refilled. Why? What's the number one cause of lack of continuation on some of those medications? Is access to a physician to refill them. So, is it safe? This is where we have, I don't want to disillusion anyone, but there's a certain percentage of things that physicians do right? and there's a certain percentage of that AI does right. AI is approaching the physician level of accuracy and precision. There will always be a place for the social connection and humanness of the physician and or care provider in the families and all of the emotional pieces that we have. That's always going to be there. Will it extend care? Absolutely. Is it safe? That's on a case-by-case basis.
Beautiful. One more question. What are your thoughts on how the climate of healthcare has changed from physicians being solely healers to now having to take on administrative roles?
Well, I think we've certainly piled a lot of administrative burden onto physicians over the past 10, 15 years with the electronic health record because we put everything in there that doctors don't like to do, which is document, pre-auth, respond to messages. So that administrative burden has been helped significantly by ambient listening or ambient scribing. The choice to take on administrative roles by physicians, I view as a extension and ability to help more patients, not less. We need physician leaders to create systems of care in the environments where we're delivering it and developing it. Because if we don't have that, we have decisions being made by folks who don't understand healthcare. And not to get all political on you, but there's maybe 6% of our nationally elected representatives have any healthcare background at all. And those are the ones that are making decisions about healthcare. And so we need to understand that as physicians to really help guide that. And frankly, that's one of the reasons why I am in the AI space. I'm in the rooms where this is occurring because I want the voice of the physician to be heard, not just the technologist or the technology itself. Technology is only as good as the people and process that surround it and the outcome. The technology itself is worthless. It needs to have a system, an eco environment to live in, and that's what I hope to create a better one for the patients that we serve.
Beautiful, thank you. As we gather here today to discuss leadership in an age increasingly shaped by artificial intelligence, I am reminded of one simple truth. There is one thing AI cannot replicate: human intelligence. AI can process data, recognize patterns, and automate tasks, but it can't replace human judgment, conscience, wisdom, empathy, or purpose. If we reflect honestly on our own ambitions, creativity, and yes, even on our imperfections, we are reminded that human beings remain the most remarkable force for innovation and progress on this planet. That is why the California Institute of Advanced Management is different. While many institutions focus solely on technical skills, our grad programs are grounded in the MLA philosophy, developing the whole person and not just the professional. Every student, and we have some here now, every student who walks through our doors leaves more capable, more purposeful, more self-aware, and better equipped to lead others. With that said, a little surprise for everyone here today. All attendees will receive 50% off their tuition should you decide to pursue a grad degree in the fall term. The professor in me feels compelled to say, please do pursue a grad degree. I encourage you to connect with our admissions counselor, any one of us here. We're here to support your aspirations and ensure you get the type of education that is valued and needed for today's organizational landscape. It is a true privilege to introduce someone I deeply admire and honored to work alongside at the California Institute of Advanced Management and the Management as a Liberal Art Research Institute. Dr. Karen Linkletter is an extraordinary scholar, educator, and leader whose work reflects the very heart of Peter Drucker's philosophy. As research director of Malari and a longtime educator in leadership and management as a liberal art, she brings not only remarkable academic insight, but a rare level of wisdom, grace, and integrity to every room she enters, a class act, truly. What makes her perspective especially meaningful is that she was once a student, mentee, and friend of Peter Drucker. Carrying forward his teachings with both authenticity and deep personal understanding. Today, she will help ground us in the philosophy that inspired this entire event. Please join me in warmly welcoming Dr. Karen Linkletter.
How are you doing? So, Adam, they put you at 1, and they put the academic at 2 p.m. So I'm going to try to keep you guys entertained for the remainder of the event. So thank you so much all for being here. Dr. Akopian, thank you for including me. I think we've all learned a lot today from our speakers so far. Let's just kind of do a quick recap. I loved hearing about gray areas and nuance first thing this morning. I think we can all use some of that in our lives these days. As an academic, I appreciate that. Dr. Riggs spoke eloquently of integrity and the importance of having a why that is more important than any particular role that you might have. And of course, Adam tells us to get in touch with our superpower. Lots of good questions that came out of that. These are all inspiring messages for leaders today, current or aspiring, as they navigate their own path. So before I give you my own thoughts, on what leadership might include, I thought it'd be fun to bring you all in to play some games. I am a professor and a research director, sorry. So, and I have students in the audience, so I have to kind of indulge this side of me. So we have some questions for you to answer. You can get your phones out. And you can log on to the QR code. And this is a word cloud game. So I want you to come up with one word. What do you think is the most important trait for a great leader? And you can put your answer in there, and we'll see what comes up. A lot of empathy. Looks like empathy is winning. Love, humility, listening, resilience, that's a good one. Self-awareness, integrity, important to Drucker. Wait for a few more. Listening, very nice. A lot of the things that we've been talking about today showing up here. Beautiful. Responsibility showing up, that's nice too, very Drucker. Trust. Great job. Okay, some of these have right answers and some of these don't. Obviously, there was no right answer to this question. This is not a graded assignment. Now, this next one, also no right answer or wrong answer to this. Authoritarian leadership is gaining appeal, according to many sources. If you go on to LinkedIn, you go on podcasts, and I'll be talking a little bit about this today, too. So the idea of a strong leader. Mike Courtwright's written a beautiful piece on our Malari webpage, shameless plug, on this topic. So why do you think this might be the case? You can give a brief answer on this one. Why might authoritarian leadership be gaining appeal? Fear, insecurity, greed, lack of empathy to build a strong world, uncertainty, lack of effective outcomes, brainwashing people. There's a lot of fear, two fears. Lack of united vision. Information saturation, that's interesting. Go on to the next one. We've got a couple. These ones have right answers and wrong answers. So we were talking about checking those three boxes. According to the latest Gallup poll, it's this year, what percentage of global employees are engaged at work? This is an engagement question. And this is pulling together your guesses on this. So we've got a range. We've got some really low guesses over there. It's like we're hovering around 30 to 40 so far. This is the global figure. There's also a United States figure, which I'll tell you a little later. You're pretty close. It's 26. Which is sad, isn't it? But see, that's why you're bringing up the questions that you're bringing up today, for Adam particularly. All right, last one. According to a recent Wall Street Journal poll, what percentage of American voters feel positively about our friend AI? Unless it's Rick handling it. And this is just like a 2-week-old poll, by the way, so this is very recent. We'll get a few more responses. Also pretty good. It's right around 20%. hope you enjoyed that. It's kind of a fun little way for you to participate in the game today. So any one of these exercises could have been the basis for an entire keynote address, I think. But what it shows us is that we are in a period of time where the concept of leadership is highly unstable. People have very different opinions about what effective leadership looks like, what leadership traits are most important, and what it takes to lead people through a crisis, period of volatility, or time period of change in technology. According to Warren Bennis, who Dr. Akopian started out with this morning with the quote from him, by the way, that quote is often attributed to Peter Drucker. It's from Warren Bennis. He was a leadership guru in the 1990s. So in 1997, Warren Bennis estimated there were over 850 definitions of leadership. By today, we're probably over 1,000. Peter Drucker was highly skeptical about the notion of leadership for most of his career. In fact, he avoided the word until about the 1990s, about the time Warren Bennis was starting to use it. This was in part because the kind of charismatic leadership he experienced in Europe as a young man was this kind, the kind of totalitarian governments that resulted in the horrible death and destruction that was the Second World War. In these cases, leadership was associated with figures who effectively led people to do terrible things. For Drucker, the charismatic man who strides onto the stage and captivates the audience is a showman and not a real leader. We talk about this in our leadership program. Leadership takes many forms and many faces. He famously referred to leadership as about more doing than dash. This is why Drucker preferred the term management over leadership. And today we talk about management is, doing the boring things, and management is about getting stuff done, and leadership is about, inspiring people. Well, not necessarily. Today we see the resurgence of the strong leader, often modeled on masculine gender stereotypes, which echoes this charismatic type. For Drucker, real leadership involved getting things done, achieving results, and most importantly, having integrity and a strong value ethic that allow people to align with a social purpose. Dr. Riggs referred to values under pressure. So these may not even involve charisma at all, but they're indicators of real leadership. So when I think of what will be most useful in a leadership blueprint for the future, I think about these key Drucker principles: aligning people with organizational mission, giving them purpose, providing them with autonomy, trusting them. We're talking about delegating and then giving people the autonomy and trusting them to do it right. Producing meaningful results that make a difference in society. This involves making people feel valued, recognized, and heard as unique individuals, yet also part of something that's bigger than themselves, the bigger picture. Charismatic leaders can certainly do this, but unless people actually believe that they are genuinely valued and that they can trust leadership to use its authority in a responsible manner, eventually people will disengage and become disillusioned. This is in a large part why we see these appallingly low engagement figures from these Gallup poll numbers that we see. They're not much better for the United States workers either. Only about 30% of workers in the United States report that they are engaged. Why is this the case? I believe in large part it's because of the phenomenon that Drucker noted some 70 years ago, the rise of the knowledge worker. Back when most jobs involved manufacturing work, productivity was easily understood. We could increase the number of outputs, per unit of input, and that would raise productivity, right? If we're making cars, we can increase the number of widgets per person who's working on the assembly line, and that's how we increase our output. And that would correspondingly increase profits. Leading and managing manual workers was relatively easy. You could offer a carrot, generally in the form of increased wages, or a stick. What did the stick look like for a manual worker? What's leading with a stick? Punishment. So that's either some sort of getting written up, some sort of a fine, or getting laid off. Workers were replaceable physical units, viewed as a cost to the organization. So beginning in the late 20th century, these jobs began to be replaced by machines. It was called automation at the time. And workers are starting to lose those manual jobs. So we start to see a shift of work towards people working with their minds, not with their hands. These so-called knowledge workers, so named by Peter Drucker, presented new challenges to managers and leaders. Why? They own the means of production. Knowledge workers carry their capital with them, and they can take it to any organization with whom they can align. We've talked a lot about aligning your skills and your superpowers, your values in your organization. With knowledge work, this is crucial. So you're not a replaceable physical unit. You are, in fact, a valuable investment, just like investments in capital assets. And as knowledge becomes more specialized, it becomes more and more difficult to replace individuals with highly specialized knowledge and experience. You are valuable. Fear-based leadership using sticks doesn't work with these people because you just take your knowledge and you go somewhere else. How are we motivated as knowledge workers? We're motivated intrinsically. We love what we do. We need our superpower. Money is not important as long as we're compensated adequately. So we're not typically motivated by perks or other carrots. At some point, if the work's not rewarding or satisfying, we're going to leave. Quiet quitting. It's difficult, or loudly quitting, as it's often called. So it's difficult to measure our productivity and thus to help knowledge workers contribute to the organization's mission and purpose. In fact, knowledge workers know how to measure their own productivity much better than their managers or leaders do. The problem is that most managers still tend to measure productivity of knowledge workers in terms of quantity, lines of code, mouse clicks, some of the things that still get measured to see how much work you're actually doing, when much of the knowledge worker productivity is a function of quality. Did you solve a bottleneck in a production problem? Did you manage a project under budget and on time? So let's fast forward to today. Today's knowledge workers, who are all in this room. In the same time period since Drucker observed the rise of knowledge work became increasingly specialized and technical. But now something is happening that's similar to what happened to those manufacturing workers in the 70s and 80s. Just as factories automated in the 20th century, machines are moving into knowledge work in the 21st century. While software engineering and computer science were coveted jobs and majors decades ago, we now see those jobs being performed by artificial intelligence. The tech sector is shedding jobs like crazy. Nearly 80,000 employees have been laid off by AI-driven layoffs this year alone. And most of these come from large companies with over 100,000 employees. So we have Amazon, Accenture, Citigroup, Dell, Intel, Microsoft, UPS, all of them laying off 10,000 or more people. Speaking of investment in AI, this new boom in capital expenditure has resulted in an unprecedented stock market surge. Some of my students were talking about market volatility. You looked at your 401k recently? Companies that announce new investment in AI and associated employee layoffs are rewarded by Wall Street with stock price surges, fueling a cycle that guarantees new investment in digital, not human capital. So one of the few joys I have of being old, is that I have seen a lot of these same stories and cycles repeat themselves. It also helps to be a historian. That's what my doctorate's in. Perhaps this isn't a joy, seeing some of these things play out yet again, but it gives me comfort knowing that this too shall pass. And I know that Drucker lived his life this way as well, because I talked to him about it. He lived through, let's see, shall we tick off all the trauma he lived through? World War I, Hitler, Great Depression, Second World War, Cold War, racial unrest, Vietnam War. Yet he managed to find hope for a functioning society of institutions in which we could all live in peace and prosperity. I know it sounds like an ideal. His ability to process all of the trauma that he witnessed and still develop a working theory that prioritized individual meaning and social responsibility helps me get up in the morning and gives me joy to teach new generations. So what was Drucker's concept of leadership that can help us through our current trauma? I know this is what you've been waiting for. Give us the good news. I believe Drucker's principles of management as a liberal art can help us guide leadership and understanding of what skills will be in demand in the future. I believe this. I really do. I don't just teach it, I believe it. Drucker always defined management in humanistic terms, but he began to clarify his idea of, can I just say MLA now? Management as a liberal art. Following the heady days of finance capitalism in the 1980s. I know all of you are way too young to remember that era. I worked on Wall Street in the 90s. So I saw some of this. So just to give you a history lesson, in the 1980s, at that time, corporations focused solely on profitability as the goal of leadership. Shareholder returns were paramount, and other stakeholders had to support that simple mission. There was a movie from 1986, I believe, called Wall Street. Michael Douglas, Charlie Sheen, and Michael Douglas plays a character called Gordon Gekko. And he's this trader, hot trader on Wall Street. All he's interested in making money. And he gives a famous speech called "Greed is Good." And it was the epitome of the 80s. Money, money, money. For Wall Street, it worked well. Companies were rewarded solely based on their financial performance, but the human cost was substantial. In the movie, he's a corporate raider, takes over companies, lays everybody off. Everybody's out of work. It happened. In the 80s, employees were fired in order to reduce costs. They were considered to be liabilities, not assets. And entire divisions were eliminated in order to solely focus on the bottom line. Not customers, not supply chains, not financial relationships. Drucker was livid about this development because he had spent so much of his life advocating for a human-focused approach to management. So he was witnessing the decimation of the functioning society he had poured his life and soul into helping create. No longer was the private sector interested in building up people for performance and results, but it was only interested in extracting short-term wealth from whatever capital it could justify to the financial markets. Drucker's response: to advocate for MLA. Its focus is on the development of people and on the recognition that they are the most important capital of an organization. Profit is important. It keeps a business going and viable. But it is not the purpose of a business. Here's your Drucker quiz. According to Drucker, what is the purpose of a business?
To make a customer.
Good, to create a customer. The purpose of a business is to create a customer. That requires that people understand what the customer values. An organization must have a clear mission, and in Drucker's terms, a theory of the business. Who is our customer? What does the customer value? What is our business? And what should our business be? These are not questions that can be answered by machines. These require a deep knowledge of human nature and understanding. And it's in Drucker's thinking, a liberal art approach to management would provide this knowledge. He was a product of liberal arts education, trained in philosophy, legal theory, literature, music, social science, and the sciences in the European tradition. A liberal arts education founded in Greek and Roman traditions was intended to create well-rounded people who could function as citizens, who could make decisions regarding governance. Such an education required people to be trained in things that we call critical thinking, looking at problems from many sides of an angle, not just one. Drucker's concept of MLA combines technical knowledge. You still have to learn accounting and finance and marketing with the art of dealing with people and complex situations. Until fairly recently, the idea of learning in the liberal arts or humanities was treated with disdain, particularly by those in the tech industry. Venture capitalist Scott Hartley's 2016 book, The Techie and the Fuzzy, it's a really good read, by the way, was shocking 10 years ago when he called for an equality of both technical and soft skills. Today, it seems that skills in such things as emotional intelligence, understanding how people think and feel, may actually be equally or more important than technical skills and training, as machines can do more and more of those technical tasks that were once lauded as humanly dominant. I would argue that our recent obsession with productivity as defined by speed and data manipulation has left us without the ability to lead effectively, particularly in complex situations where there is, wait for it, nuance and gray areas. We've come full circle. That's an accident because I didn't know what she was going to talk about. At CIAM, we are inundated with students who are technical wizards, but they lack the skill they need to effectively become leaders in the 21st century. Our goal is to help them become great leaders. In our esteemed professor, Dr. Rick Johnson's words, we help them become good bosses. So now I want to give you a few tangible examples of how an MLA approach to leadership might actually apply to real situations in today's world of AI and technology. First, the benefit of liberal arts thinking. We aren't expecting leaders to become experts in French literature or Greek philosophy. But understanding the approaches of different disciplines helps provide different lenses for problem solving. History, for example, teaches that there are a range of explanations for events and the importance of evidence and its quality, and the need for context in making judgments about the causes and consequences of past events, as well as their relationship to the present. So context. Analysts need to factor in human and social context when evaluating data that relate to things like surveys that involve self-assessment, things like that. In decision-making, one needs to consider the individuals involved as well as the organizations and their culture. How those factors play a role in various players, how they're going to react to the decision, who's responsible for implementing the decision, is somebody going to slow walk it, why, what's the culture of the organization about change. It's not just a decision's made and then it's going to get done. When does that happen? Rarely. At a minimum, one should expose oneself to a range of disciplines so you have a rudimentary knowledge of things like psychology. Don't expect you to read the entire textbook. Just know a little bit about it. The values of empathy and getting out of the silo. We all know about this. We are all increasingly specialized. It's so easy to just, somebody talked about, let's be in our bubble, our media bubble. What's my feed telling me? But we need to learn to appreciate each other's specializations and perspectives. I know it's hard to do, increasingly. But the more we can do this, the more we can effectively communicate. Drucker warned of intellectual arrogance. We're all guilty of this. I know I am. This is the pride in not knowing something. I'm really bad at math. Do you ever do this? We all do. And you're proud of it, aren't you? Get careful with that. Because you need to have a little bit of knowledge about it. You don't have to say I'm really good at it, but don't be proud of being bad at something. It's okay. I'm not very good at it. It's okay, but not bad. Be aware of what your team needs you to know about what they do. So you need to know a little bit about something about what people do. You don't have to be an expert in it. We work together as specialists who are team members, not bosses and subordinates when we're knowledge workers. We need to be open to learning and reach across the divide. It also helps in building teams. So then we get to Drucker's 4 pillars, which students in our program here have memorized, usually by about the second year. Knowledge, self-knowledge, wisdom, and leadership. Knowledge is specific, but it is being challenged definitionally by AI. Is it what we get out of a large language model? Or is it just loose information? We hear a lot about self-knowledge. We've covered that topic today beautifully, I think. Thank you so much. Wisdom could have been a whole topic today. I'll leave you to think about how you use wisdom in the practice of your own leadership. I think it comes with time. It took me a long time to figure out what my passion was, what my superpower was. It took me a long time to figure out who I was as a person, and I think it comes with time. Drucker's final pillar is leadership, which is the point of today, and building on the previous 3. Coming full circle, leadership for Drucker and for me is not about the strong, charismatic figure. It's about the person or the team who accomplishes real results for the mission of the organization and for social purpose. In short, it's about making people feel good, about making a difference in the world, while accomplishing real results. It's easier said than done. So I want to leave you with some skills. I have 3 of them that I think are really important for the blueprint for moving forward. The first skill in today's AI world is interpersonal and organization alignment abilities. That's kind of a mouthful. But these are sort of skills in negotiation, diplomacy, empathy, which we talked a lot about today. These are things machines can't do. How can we augment AI effectively and be true leaders and truly human? These are very important for change leadership, something that is increasingly in demand for all leaders as we face accelerating rates of social economic, and technological change. These skills are also needed for implementing cross-functional systems, like a new accounting system, a new marketing program, or a program management tool, other applications like that. Leaders also need to be thinking through how a new program or system will impact various players in an organization, how they might react to an innovation. Will they be responsive to doing new ways, things in a different way, in a new way, or will they perceive it as a threat, particularly to their functional area? Finally, these skills are crucial for being able to respond to shifts in market demand or customer value. Again, this involves the ability to respond to changing conditions and work with others in an empathetic way. As Drucker said, there are no irrational customers. Why do they use the product that way? They shouldn't. That's an opportunity. So here's an example. Systematic abandonment. We talked about this in one of our study groups that we have on campus here. And people had trouble with the concept of abandonment. That's a very psychologically charged term. Drucker made the case that if you want to innovate, you got to give something else up. You can't just keep piling on new things, because something's got to give. So building an organization that has an understanding of the need to constantly assess products, processes, services, systems makes the idea of giving things up less threatening. If it's part of the culture, there's not this sort of ownership where people are holding on to things that need to be let go of. One person's opportunity is another individual's loss if you don't think that way. Diplomacy and empathy are crucial here. How can you work together as an organization so that this becomes a normal thing to do? Another important skill is interpretation of data and behavioral patterns. A lot of the students work with data and learn these skills. How do we make decisions about responding to new or unexpected events? COVID. Data's changing constantly. That's the world we live in, of unreliable, unexpected, changing data. How do we do that? This requires an understanding of Drucker's mandate that we do no harm. We have a Hippocratic oath, too, in Drucker's form of leadership. Do not knowingly do harm. We have to think through the possible consequences of a decision or an innovation that we may not necessarily see in the data today. Here's an example, Meta's platforms. Thinking through the uses of TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, including the role of dopamine production and response to stimuli, could have led to an evaluation of potential risks to youth if you'd had the right people in the room who thought from a psychological perspective, not just a technological perspective. Now they're facing tens and millions of dollars. Could have been avoided. Lastly, of Blueprint's needed skills, we have creative synthesis and transdisciplinary understanding and coordination. This is where you have big teams or medium-sized teams with people with very different specializations who have to work together on projects. You might have public health, sociology, psychology, project management, different specific specializations working on things. These are large-scale projects or very projects that impact society in a big way or that impact future generations. The Artemis II project is an example of one such project. And then sustainability projects are also an example of this. And one that's a very, very important one is thinking about what's going to happen to this city, which is New Orleans. And now we understand that New Orleans is one of the lowest lying areas in the world. And it's predicted by the end of the century that the city will likely be underwater. So if you have to think of all of the types of creative solutions if we can't mitigate all of the problems? Where are we going to put those people? What do we do with the historic culture that's in that centuries-old city? What do we do to preserve that? It's not only a question of relocating people with minimum disruption, but how about keeping some sort of historical memory intact, and how do we do that? So you're going to have to bring in people from the arts, the sciences, soil sciences, psychologists, anthropologists. These are big, big projects that need leaders from a variety of disciplines to working with other specialists to come up with solutions. So as I said earlier, one of the few benefits of aging is the ability to think in terms of historical perspective, and my training as a historian certainly helps. And I'm often reminded of the American historian Henry Adams, who visited the 1900 Paris World's Fair. And at that event, Adams got to see the Great Hall of Machines, which was an exhibit of the new industrial technologies of the 20th century. And like many who attended the fair, Adams was awestruck by the power unleashed by the electromagnetic generators that were on display in that hall, which was brand new technology for that era. In response, Adam wrote an essay called The Virgin and the Dynamo, in which he compared the allure of the new technology of the new century to religion. And he said this new worship of technology, he feared, was replacing the old cultural roots of religion, which held community together. And he symbolized that with Christianity and the use of the Virgin Mary in artwork. So he said, if the dynamo becomes our new source of awe and meaning, we would lose the core of our humanity, which is our sense of ethics, values, and right and wrong. He called for a middle ground. Innovation is good as long as it serves a human purpose and provides a social good. A couple of weeks ago, Pope Leo XIV, go on now, issued an encyclical letter, that's a teaching, entitled Magnifica Humanitas, on safeguarding the human person in the time of artificial intelligence. Anyone read it? I see some hands. Oh, the nerd in me is excited. That's great. The Pope's first encyclical calls for preserving the sanctity and dignity of magnificent humanity. It's the Latin translation of the Latin, noting that artificial intelligence is a useful tool but distinct from humans. Echoing Adams and Peter Drucker, Leo calls for us to use technology for the good of all, not just the few. As we think through what a leadership blueprint looks like for our new era, MLA gives us a firm foundation that provides this balance between technology and humanity and keeps us focused on the social responsibility of organizations. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Dr. Linkletter. Round of applause, please, one more time. You can now see how much I enjoy working with her and why. So, first of all, thank you so much for all of you being here today. I hope you enjoyed the program. Before we close out the program, I'd like to invite up Chief Human Resources Officer of the City of Glendale, Paula Adams.
Hey, Paula.
So I'm glad that everyone was able to spend their Saturday being influenced by all of our thought leaders and the leadership blueprint. On behalf of the City of Glendale, on behalf of our Mayor, Artie Kasakian, I would like to present the California Institute of Advanced Management with this mayor's commendation. And it reads in part, in recognition of the California Institute of Advanced Management's dedication to preserving the legacy of Peter Drucker and advancing the principles of management as a liberal art, Artie Kasakian proudly extends this commendation to CIAM on their leadership event. Signed by the mayor, May 30th, 2026. Congratulations.
Also, I'd like to present another commendation on behalf of Assembly Member John Harabedian for the Leadership Blueprint event. On behalf of the California State Assembly, I'm proud to celebrate this exciting occasion. Your work to bring our community together around the common purpose of inspiring emerging leaders is truly commendable. I thank you for your efforts to empower those who are in positions of influence. Wishing you a successful future. Okay, so as we conclude the Leadership Blueprint program, a reminder to write your note of reflection. I saw that some of you did. It's rich with your thoughts. So I encourage you to do so on your way out. Please join us for the networking reception outside in the Oval Mall. I know that Gen Zers, which I'm your biggest advocate, but I know you guys sometimes shy away from connecting with leaders, and I really encourage you not to be shy today. So approach them, communicate, connect. On behalf of the California Institute of Advanced Management, thank you for investing in yourselves, for engaging in these conversations, and for being a part of this journey. We hope you leave today with new insights, renewed purpose, and the courage to lead with both competence and character. And always, oh, sorry. Yes, sure, we can applaud. I was just going to leave you with one last thought, that leadership is not measured by the title we hold, but by the lives we impact. Thank you for joining us, and see you shortly at the reception. Thank you.